Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We're just standing by while they're getting organized in the Crystal Ballroom.
Over there it worked. Here. I tried to.
Sorry that we're a couple minutes late getting going. We're trying to get all our audio and video and everything else together. I'm Roger Blackwell. I'm president of the Democratic Club here in Leisure World. And I'm glad to see all of you and want to remind you that our next and final forum here in Leisure World will be June 2nd with the gubernatorial candidates. And that's a good way to wind up a series. That'll be our 6th forum, I believe, something like that. Anyway, before we start, some of you knew Ben Kramer's father, and he just died day before yesterday, and there will be a funeral service tomorrow in Olney for him. But I'd like to have just a brief moment of silence, please, because he represented this area. Many of you knew him as relatives in here. So if we could have a moment of silence, please, to just remember Mr. Kramer, Sidney Kramer. Thank you. And Ben, we're with you. One other thing I want to say, and this isn't new to anybody who's been political in the recent period of time, but it became more apparent with the Pennsylvania primaries, is that this isn't just any election coming up. This is election about preserving democracy, or whether neo-fascists will take over the House and the Senate. And so I want people to keep that in mind. And we have a lot more people on Zoom. We have 65 people on Zoom. Keep that in mind, because we are going to be making some demands. The Leisure World Democratic Party is going to be making some demands of you. And we hope that you'll be able to step up and help us out. Some of us are going to be going to Pennsylvania, for example, where the Republican gubernatorial candidate was here on January 6th, also paid for buses to come down here on January 6th, and is a principal Trump supporter on in Pennsylvania, and wanted the electors to vote for Trump and not for Biden, despite his big victory there. So with that in mind, into
Stand by for a moment, please. Melanie, you're muted.
Chabot, who many of you know, he did some moderating here 4 years ago before I was here. So, Elliot, it's your show. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Raj. It is marvelous to be back. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I understand in addition to the audience here, we also have an audience on Zoom tonight. So many folks are watching this. Tonight, the club has invited all of the candidates who are running for the office of Montgomery County State's Attorney. They actually invited everybody. It turns out that no Republican even bothered to file with the Board of Elections. So we have 4 Democrats tonight who are going to be slugging it out between now and the middle of July. The format tonight is each of the candidates will have 3 minutes to make an opening statement. Then we'll move to probably the most important part of tonight, which is questions from you all and hopefully answers from the candidates. Each candidate will be entitled to respond to each question. So those of you who figured on aiming a question at a particular candidate, all 4 get to respond to all of the questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond, and because it is sometimes tempting to speechify when you're asking a question, questions are limited to 2 minutes. Once we get to about 8:15 or thereabouts, we'll move to the concluding statements. Each candidate has 2 minutes. The order for the opening statements was drawn, but the candidates were invited to come up just before the forum. They drew lots, and they are in the order that you see them here up front. That is the order that they will give their opening statements. When we get to the first question, the candidate who drew the second position will be the first to answer that question. We'll go through, cycle through all 4 candidates. The second question, the candidate who drew the third position will be the first to respond, and so on. And we'll continue to do that rotation throughout the entire evening. I think that covers all the preliminaries. The candidates tonight are Tom DeGonia, Bernice Miracle North, Perry Paler, and John McCarthy. And so we'll start with Mr. DeGonia.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yep. Okay, great. Well, first, thank you, Elliot, and thanks everyone for coming out this evening. I want to make sure everybody can hear me all the way in the back. I drew lot number 1, and I hope that that is a good foreboding for things moving forward. That's certainly where I'm going to appear on the ballot, is at the top of the list for you. My name's Tom DeGonia, and I'm here with my family tonight. My wife, my son, my daughter are here in the audience. Hopefully you get a chance to meet them. We live just up the road here in Olney. I'm no stranger to Leisure World. I've been here many times. Remember Elliot and I meeting over here with the Leisure World Club. And so I'm happy to be back here. I'm happy to be back here, and I'm energized about running for state's attorney this year because, as Roger said, as Elliot said, this is a year we have to make a difference, and change can't wait. We can't wait for another term, can't wait for another year. There are people in jail. There are people who are being hurt on the street, and we can't wait for that change to come. We can't wait for somebody to learn how to do the job. We can't wait for somebody to start to try to change things that have been a problem for almost 20 years. So we can't keep doing things the same way we've been doing them for the last 20 years. What we've got to do is we've got to focus our resources on violent crime. We've got to go out. We've got to get guns off the street. We have to reform our juvenile justice system, right? We got to reform our juvenile justice system, keep kids out of jail, don't charge them as adults, get them the help they need. And we're going to do that through a community-based approach. My prosecutors aren't going to be sitting in the courthouse waiting for problems to come to them. They're going to be out in the community with you. We've got 6 police districts. You're going to have a prosecutor in this community. Now, people are going to say, well, why are you qualified to do this job, Tom? I'm qualified to do this job because I was a prosecutor here. I was a prosecutor for 8 years in Montgomery County. I prosecuted every type of crime we had. Misdemeanor cases all the way up to felonies. When I left, I was a leader of a felony trial team, tried every type of case you can try in Montgomery County in this courthouse, right over here in Rockville. I left, I went into private practice. I've been a defense attorney for the last 15 years. So I've seen the criminal justice system from both sides, in the courtroom, from the prosecutor's side, from the defendant's side, from the jail, from detention centers. So I can tell you how we're going to reform this and how we're going to actually make those changes we need to make, because we can't wait. Those people can't wait. Our communities can't wait. We can't wait for another 4 years to make changes that are long overdue. I was fortunate to come to law school out here. I studied at American University. Jamie Raskin was my law professor. So if anybody taught me how to do it right, I think this room would certainly agree that Jamie Raskin is somebody who you can learn from. But more importantly, you can learn how to do it the right way. I had the good fortune to also lead, elected by my peers, to lead the Bar Association here in Montgomery County. That's all the lawyers in the county chose me to be the leader of the Bar Association. And they chose me to be the leader during one of the most tumultuous times we had in Montgomery County. We had the murder of George Floyd, that we had a racial reckoning in our community. We had COVID. But what did we do? We stepped up, we created the Racial Justice Council. We educated our attorneys, we educated our bench about racial justice and what that really means. We didn't just talk about it, we went out and we did something about it. We got the leaders of the law firms, the biggest law firms in the county, to buy in, to put their money where their mouth was, to actually change the curve, to actually hire, recruit, and train people, to actually make our community a more equitable place. So not only do I have the experience in the courtroom, on both sides of the courtroom, but I have the experience leading organizations, creating organizations, building partnerships that are going to enable me to actually move our office of the state's attorney, the chief law enforcement officer for the county, into the future. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bernice American North. I'm a wife, mother, daughter of immigrants, daughter of Silver Spring. And if elected, I'll be the first Black woman to serve as your next state's attorney. When I thought about running for this office, I thought about in consideration of the fact that I knew I had the fresh vision, the experience professionally and learned experience in the criminal justice system, as well as the leadership to move Montgomery County forward in our criminal justice system. When I am elected, I want to focus on equity and access to diversion programs, so we're not over criminalizing people that don't need to be in the system. For instance, people who are in mental health crises, or there's drug issues that be better suited for treatment. I have plans to make sure that we're properly diverting those types of cases out of the system that don't need to be in it. I'm also going to fight for restorative justice for our youth and implement programs and treatment programs inside that office to making sure that the youth actually get what they've been crying for in this county for several months now, mental health resources. I also want to make sure that we're addressing violent crime comprehensively, not just prosecuting the crime as zealously as we will as prosecutors, but making sure we have community-based solutions. And that includes having a violence interrupter program and making sure those individuals have the mental health resources needed to actually be effective in the community. And these are just some of the ideas that I want to bring forward to make sure that we all feel safe. My background is that I mentioned I'm from Silver Spring. I went to public schools here. I graduated from Montgomery Blair High School. Thank you. Go Blazers. And I went to the University of Maryland, College Park. As actually at that time, where I got my first access to the criminal justice system as a student aide at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Maryland. And that's what really allowed me to cultivate my passion for criminal justice. I also went to Howard Law School because I knew that the criminal justice system isn't always perfect for everybody. And having a social justice mindset is critical to criminal justice reform. So Howard's the school that I went to get that education. After that, I went to clerk for 2 judges in DC Superior Court and Prince George's County. before becoming a line prosecutor. When I was a line prosecutor, I had access to, well, I had experience with misdemeanors, juveniles, and felony cases. But I wasn't there that long, about 6 years, because I got tired of seeing that the system wasn't just for everyone. So I went into private practice. I worked for a small law firm in Silver Spring before going out into my own.
So,
And,
stop.
oh, sorry. Can I wrap up my last point?
Yes.
And I'm in private practice as well as a community leader in the community, including co-chairing the Reimagined Public Safety Task Force and also serving as chair of the Silver Spring Citizen Advisory Board, where I worked on criminal justice reform issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. Peck.
May 14th, 2022, Buffalo, New York. 10 people are killed in a mass shooting, a racially motivated mass shooting. Ladies and gentlemen, gun violence has gone too far, and it's time to stop it. I had a whole introduction plan, but this incident, this last incident, has shaken me to my core. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Gary Baylor, and I'm running for state's attorney in Montgomery County. I was raised here in Montgomery County. My parents moved us here in 1974. I'm a proud graduate of Paint Branch High School. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm the only candidate up here. I won the county championship in basketball back in 1975. So I'm excited, I'm homegrown. And some of the things that I'm involved with here in Montgomery County, I spent 8 years on the Juvenile Justice Commission. I was appointed by then County Executive Ike Leggett, confirmed by the County Council, and I spent 8 years on the Juvenile Justice Commission. So we know the juvenile issues are critical at this point. We have a group of students, and my daughter is one of them. They spent the last 2 years isolated because of COVID. We have a group of high school students that are graduating that spend more time at home than they have in school, and we've seen a lack of supervised activity. That's one of the things I'm going to focus on is juvenile justice when I'm elected state's attorney. Behavioral health. Our office is going to live at that intersection with criminal justice, intersects with behavioral health. We're going to have behavioral health specialists in our office. The motto of my office is going to be see the whole person, not just what they did, not just what when the person is charged, not just the accusation, but the whole person. I currently serve as a member of Montgomery County Charter Review Commission, where we advise council members on questions they have regarding the Montgomery County Charter, which is akin to our constitution for the county. So what do I want to do when I'm elected? I want to expand and enhance diversion opportunities in Montgomery County. I want to focus on behavioral health. I want to focus on our seniors. Our seniors have been under attack more than any other time in the last 20 years, particularly as it relates to cybercrime, virtual crimes, financial crimes. I'm going to start a center for senior justice where we can be able to monitor and serve the senior community with one call, whether or not you got a call where you were a victim of an internet scam at the bank or a violent crime. You're going to be able to come to my office and we'll help you, whether it's in the state or if it's in Florida or if it's in California. We're going to have the Center for Senior Justice. Have so much. We're going to create 2 units, the Public Integrity Unit and the Conviction and Sentencing Integrity Unit. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a current Deputy State's Attorney in Prince George's County, where I'm part of a management team that manages 170 employees and a $20 million budget. You're going to hear about what a lot of people want to do. I'm the only candidate, the only challenger that's actually engaged in criminal justice reform right now. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to answering your questions.
Thank you. Good evening. First of all, I'm very happy that Roger gave an acknowledgement to Sid Kramer. The Kramer family is very close to me. Ben's one of my best friends, and this family's had a great tradition towards serving this community. I also want to give a shout out to Sandy Zimmer, who's the vice president of this Democratic Club, and wish her well as she's coming back from some illnesses. Because we all, I think everybody here wants. Nice. There's so many things that have been done over the years, creative things, to make the office that I run the best office in the state. We've always
been the leader in the state in terms of creativity. In terms of diversion, go on the website, read the articles, the materials I brought outside. No one has more diversionary programs than Montgomery County. No one. We just create, our newest diversion is a homeless docket to deal with the homeless community down in Silver Spring. Mental health. We have mental health courts here in Montgomery County. Why? Because I hired Phil Andrews, tasked him after 16 years on the county council, I let him warm up in the bullpen for a while bit. And I said, look, we need a mental health court to deal with the crisis here. And there were blockers here in Montgomery County. And you had to learn how to navigate the blockers to make sure that we now have the mental health court to deal with people coming into the criminal justice system because they have mental health challenges in both the district and the circuit court. Truancy prevention. Look, I'm really concerned about youth violence in this community. I'm concerned about ghost guns. But one of the main things we need to do is get kids to re-engage in their education. Yesterday was graduation day in my courthouse. We had a drug court graduation, I think it was the 20th at 4 o'clock, and at 5 o'clock, we had the truancy court graduation where hundreds of kids graduated from our truancy prevention program, trying to get them to re-educate. This is not a lock them up strategy. This is not even a diversionary strategy. This is pre-diversionary strategy where we're trying to reach out to kids that have been identified by the school system as needing our help. Who's leading that charge? The state attorney's office is leading that charge. Speak Up, Save a Life. We have other crises here. We're not sitting back and watching things pass us like a parade go by. There's an opiate crisis in this country. 100,000 people in this country lost their lives to opiates last year. 100,000, 30,000 people in Maryland. 3,000 people in Maryland. 112 in Montgomery County. We have a Speak Up, Save a Life program. We go out. I spoke to 2,000 high school students this month, 80,000 in the last 3 years, trying to warn them about the dangers of opiates, and in particular, fentanyl, which is involved in about 80 to 90% of the deaths.
Seconds.
30 seconds?
15.
15 seconds. First, I have an independent look at police use of force cases right here in Montgomery County. First, I have an independent audit done of how, in terms of race, ethnicity, and how we process things. First office in the state to stop the criminal prosecution where there are real racial disparities in people who are caught up in marijuana possession cases. The real creative juice here in Maryland for many, many years has been what's happening in Montgomery County. People steal our ideas all the time.
We'll start the first round of questions. I've got a number of questions that folks have submitted ahead of time. I'd like you all to give a few moments to think about questions as we make one technical
Dusty on the ground.
All righty. Our timekeeper this evening is going to be warning the candidates when they have 30 seconds left by holding up a sign that says 30 seconds. And when you're out of time, timekeeper is going to hold up a sign that says stop. So please follow those directions. Remember, there are some people in tonight's audience who just have not decided who they are going to vote for and support for state's attorney, and they may be judging you on your ability to follow directions. Now go to the first question that was submitted earlier, and it is, you would be running for a large office with many employees. Are you prepared to supervise such an office? Each candidate has up to 2 minutes to respond to the question, and we'll start off with Ms. Mirkos North. Ms. Mirko North.
Yes, thank you so much.
Sorry, very good.
So with respect to the question of whether I'm able to lead an office of over 100 people, most of our attorneys, none of them are support staff, the answer is yes. Having been serving this community for almost 10 years, I'm very familiar with the diversity of folks in this county. And this diversity of folks that we need to change in that office. I was a line prosecutor myself, and I can testify to how it feels when you are one of the employees in an office and you're experiencing a massive change in leadership. I served under 3 prosecutors in 6 years. One was there for 25 years, the other one was a interim prosecutor, and the other one completely changed the office. So I have a great deal of experience dealing with the vast change that will come leading an office this large with a change this big when I'm elected state's attorney. And that's going to require me and my executive staff to talk with each and every prosecutor in that office to make sure that we're in line with the vision of a more fair and equitable justice system. Also have abilities to make sure that we're more collegial, because as a former prosecutor, I know the prosecutor's office is pretty much like family. And I very much value that concept of the office. It allows all of us to work efficiently and to work closely for a better community for Montgomery County. So that is how I will approach handling an office that large. I'm also a big fan of delegating. I think that's a successful way of being productive. And being a small business owner, I know the importance of delegation, especially in the midst of a pandemic. Knowing the importance of valuing your employees is so critical. And those are the character traits you need to lead not just a large office, but an office that's going to stay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. As I mentioned in my opening, I currently serve as Deputy State's Attorney in Prince George's County. It's actually larger than Montgomery County. We have 107, I'm part of a leadership team that manages 170 full-time equivalents and a budget of $20 million. I manage 4 units, the Guns and Drugs unit, which I also serve as chief of that unit, the Major Crimes unit, the Post-Trial unit, and the Grand Jury Screening unit. Ladies and gentlemen, on any given day, I am responsible for 1,000 criminal cases. So I stand ready to come in and lead the office of the size of Montgomery County. I meet with my direct reports twice a week. Those are the other unit chiefs. Then I manage my unit, my attorneys that report directly to me. We're on a call every morning because the Zoom, they know they can expect a call from me anytime as early as 7:30 in the morning. And I tell them they can call me as late as midnight. During these times of COVID, it has to be constant communication. The phrase I use at work is over-communicate. We have to over-communicate, we have to be engaged, whether it's in person, on a Teams or Zoom meeting, or on a cell phone. We have to communicate and stay engaged. And that's my management style. When you actually implement changes like getting rid of cash bail, or changing the marijuana prosecution, things of that nature, you don't just give an edict or write an email. You have to be engaged with your attorneys. You have to actually go to court, whether it's via Zoom, whether it's a virtual hearing or in person. You have to have that kind of open door leadership, because now they're looking to us as leaders more than ever. You know, they come and ask questions, especially the younger attorneys, and you know, we have to pretend that we've been here before, right? COVID is new to all of us. And sometimes it's just confidence. Sometimes knowing that, hey, we are all prepared to take on this challenge. We're about to go into another wave, right? And there's also a backlog of cases. So not only do we got to communicate with our attorneys, we have to communicate with the judges and the defense attorneys, because we're like Star Trek. We're no man or woman has gone before, and we need experienced leaders that can manage an office the size of Montgomery County. Thank you.
I think Perry was going to take the mic on, but let me say, I think the best thing I can say is I do it now. I will tell you, ask people who are defense attorneys around this state, which is the best prosecutor's office in the state. We are uniformly recognized as the best. They come to us for our ideas. 60% of my staff, and Debbie Feinstein is here, head of my special victims units. Your mom and dad are with her tonight. 60% of my attorneys are women. I have 7 trial teams. 5 are headed by women. I have 2 deputies. 1 is a man, 1 is a woman. I've got 70 different races and ethnicities represented within the 170 people that work for me in the office. I do think it's vitally important, particularly in the area of criminal justice, for a lot of the reasons that should be obvious to everybody in this room, that my office needs to look like the community that we serve, and that's always been an objective. I also recognize that some of the offices can't find people to come work for them. There are huge gaps and holes in a lot of these offices where these changes have taken place, and they don't have attorneys that want the jobs in those offices. That's a big secret that people don't talk about. People are still banging down my door wanting to come and work in Montgomery County. During the years I've been in the state's attorney's office, 35 of my lawyers in my office have become judges, recognized as leaders in the legal community here in Montgomery County. I am proud of that. I will also say to you, what else do I think it takes to lead? You got to mentor. There's a lot of young people that sometimes come into this business. I'm a trial lawyer. I'm American at the College of Trial Lawyers. It's basically getting elected to the Hall of Fame for being a trial lawyer in America. I was the first prosecutor in the history of Maryland to ever get elected to the American College of Trial Lawyers. I've tried more cases than anybody in this county. So when young people come to me about evidence, procedure, I can teach them, I can mentor them, I can make them the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Elliot. Elliot, the question is about management, right? How do you manage? You have the experience to manage.
Question, you would be running a large office with many employees. Are you prepared to supervise such an office?
Absolutely. Not only am I prepared to supervise an office, I'm prepared to lead the office. And there's a big difference between managing people, just making sure people are showing up when they're supposed to be showing up, and actually leading and inspiring. And this office, the state's attorney, sets the policies and make sure those policies are followed and they inspire their people. It used to be the office that everyone looked to in the state, but it's not. People are leaving the office, prosecutors are leaving the office. And I'll tell you that when you want to come up here and take credit for people who have been a judge who came through your office, who you didn't hire, you're not taking credit for anybody. Yes, judges have come through that office. Yes, bar leaders have come through that office. But I will tell you, the current leadership is not the one who hired those people, who recruited them. That wasn't the leadership that you're talking about. The leadership you're talking about is what I did at the Bar Association, is we stuck our neck out and we led. We led on racial equity. I hired the first person of color as the executive director in the history of the Bar Association. I didn't just talk about it, I did it. I went out and I recruited and got buy-in from the other law firms to actually make those changes. When I was a prosecutor, I managed a prosecution team. I know what it's like to try cases, not in some courthouse, not in any courthouse, but in the courthouse right down the street where we're going to be. I sit down with the judges. I sit down with the administrative judge in district court and circuit court when we were in the midst of COVID and built those relationships and said, how are we going to get through this? That's the leadership and that's the management skill that I bring to this. So when you want to talk about leadership, leadership means moving forward. Leadership isn't about what's in the rearview mirror, it's about the road ahead. And that's where we need to be looking. I've got the skills, but most importantly, I have the passion and the ability to lead this office into the future.
Thank you. Our next question to all four of the candidates is there anything you could do to protect a woman's right to choose? And we'll start with Mr. Bailey.
Well, the first answer is I would do everything in my power within the law. And so one of the things that we would also do is to, when there are healthcare providers in Maryland, particularly in Montgomery County, I would make sure that access is always made available. That people seeking healthcare, whether it's just information or whatever decisions people make, and they're seeking healthcare, that they will have access. They will be safe. They will be able to provide, be able to go and get whatever decisions they make. They'll get the service that they need. We're also going to protect doctors. We're going to protect healthcare providers. They're not going to be subject to any punishment here in Maryland, and they won't be subjected to any out-of-state charges. We will not honor any subpoenas or any summonses or any charges from any place out of state choosing to prosecute doctors in Maryland. So I will take every action under the law to protect not only a woman's right to choose, a woman's right to seek information, seek medical care, and I will protect the doctors in this state from any attacks, local or from out of state.
I just, on this particular topic, I would just begin by saying, I was actually stunned when the opinion leaked. Maybe I'm naive. I was stunned when the opinion leaked from the Supreme Court of what appears to be happening. I will say largely the issue relative to abortion is a legislative issue. A legislative issue, or at this point in time, an issue for the Supreme Court, not a local prosecutor's office. I will say this. We did pass a new law here in Maryland that broadened those who are eligible now to perform abortions in our state. It's a new law. Midwives and nurses and physician's assistants now, as well as doctors, can perform abortions. We have broadened those who are there to provide this service to women who want this service, and they have the right to demand that service. We will protect access to those clinics and to those locations. Look, there are people that feel strongly about this issue on the other side. And we are going to make sure that women who choose and elect that choice in their life are protected when they want to access these clinics, access those doctors, those midwives. We will provide them the protection of the law so that their rights are not criminally violated. But again, ultimately, this issue will be decided by the Supreme Court. There's strong feelings. I'm sure that we probably are pretty closely aligned on this issue up here. But the issue is a legislative issue. There was an attempt within Maryland legislature to have a constitutional amendment placed on our ballot in the fall. That did not succeed in the most recent legislative session. So that will not be an issue for us. But again, probably the biggest step was the broadening of those who were allowed legally to now perform abortions in our state was probably the biggest change here in Maryland, and we will protect those providers.
The answer is yes, and I think it's bears that it shouldn't come as a shock based on the Supreme Court that we have during those interviews that everyone came out and said that that's what they were going to do, and when they got the number on the court, they did it. So when a conservative state passes a law that says if you're a woman and you come to any state that essentially harbors or provides abortion services, that they're going to try to prosecute you, it's critically important that you have a prosecutor who has come out and said, I support a woman's right to choose unequivocally, and that I am not going to criminalize that either in Maryland, and I'm not going to participate in criminalizing that to prosecute her for a crime in another state when she returns home. I'm not going to prosecute doctors for that, and I'm going to protect people to have the access to the facilities. There's a law in the books. You have to enforce it. There's a right to free speech. There's a right to protest, but you cannot impede someone's access. And it's going to be critical because I can guarantee you the Republicans in other states are going to pass laws that are going to try to be long-arm statutes that they're going to try to come to Maryland and prosecute someone who comes here to get access. And you need to know who's in that courthouse, who's not going to cooperate with it, and who is unequivocally going to support a woman's right to choose.
I'm so grateful for that question because this is why we need leaders, women leaders in public office. This is why we need them as lawyers. This is one reason why I went to law school, to have more lawyers out there in the profession fighting for these issues like the women's right to choose. No, of course, I'm not going to allow criminalization of abortions. That's a no-brainer for me. And not only that, it's important to recognize that in the state of Maryland, we have outstanding women leadership, pushing the ball forward to making sure our rights are protected. Ariana Kelly and all the women legislators, Speaker Jones, and counting on leaders like the new Democratic Women's Caucus leader in the House, Leslie Lopez, who has endorsed my campaign. We need to continue to work with those leaders to push the ball forward, because it was the Senate that stalled the progress, and the Senate leaders were not women, let's be honest. And this is why it's critical to have a prosecutor, a woman prosecutor, pushing the ball forward and making sure our rights are protected, and making sure that no other states in the country tries to impede on one's ability to have an abortion in Maryland and other parts of this country. We need to make sure that we're not going backwards, but we're moving forward. And that's the kind of prosecutor I'm going to be for this office.
The next question that was submitted in advance to all four of the candidates is, what makes you the best candidate to protect Montgomery County residents, programs, and services? And we'll start with Mr. McCarthy.
Repeat that question.
Certainly. The question again is, what makes you the best candidate to protect Montgomery County residents, programs, and services?
You know, to get anything done in government, you have to know how the government works. You have to know people in government. You have to have the respect of people in government. You have to have the ability to access people in government. You know, when Ike Leggett was here and Tom Major was the chief of police in Montgomery County, our crime rate dropped over the first 14 years I was state's attorney by 29.6%. I could call up and talk to them about different things we wanted to do to make this community safer 24 hours a day. When I wanted to start a mental health court here and it was actually being blocked by a judge because he didn't want to create another specialty docket here in Montgomery County. A specialty docket is a docket that only handles certain kinds of cases, maybe like domestic violence or something. He didn't want to do that. Well, I made friends with the head of the district court, who was a judge in Prince George's County, told him what I wanted to do. He was very much in favor of mental health courts. And I got him as an ally. And I backdoored the local administrative judge because working with the chief judge for the entire state, got him to say, if you want another judgeship in Montgomery County, I'll actually give you two. But you've got to agree to start a mental health court. Now you need to have access to people. You need to know who to talk to. Look, I'm very proud of the fact that there are 50 elected officials that have previously or currently held office in the state, including Brian Frosch, Ike Leggett, former governors, former senators. Why do they all back me? I've earned their trust. My word is my bond. They work with me. They know I've gotten things done. That's why they stand with me. I can make those calls. I have those contacts. That's why you have programs like the mental health court and and many of the other things that we've done. That's why we started Speak Up, Save Life. That's why you have a truancy court program. Stop.
Protecting the community, the programs, and the services is absolutely about relationships. And I've been building relationships in Montgomery County and leading in Montgomery County for the last almost 30 years. So when you need to have a problem and you say, listen, this person needs a diversionary program, I can pick up the phone and I can call and have called the director of corrections. And she's worked with me to help develop programs. I've worked with people to develop pre-release center programs, working with employers to do that. I mentioned my work with the bench, having a relationship with our judges when you want to implement a new program. I'm not just talking about implementing a new program. I'm talking about building those relationships like we did at the Family Justice Center Foundation. That is collaboration. That is selfless. That's working to solve a problem. And that's what you need to do. And when you want to talk about earning the trust and who trusts you to protect the people on the streets in Montgomery County, when I went to the men and women who serve as law enforcement officers, and they said to me, they said, Tom, we hear you. We trusted you when you were a prosecutor, and we trusted you and we trusted your integrity when you're a defense attorney, because I've seen it on both sides. And they said to me, Tom, we're going to endorse you and we're going to endorse your candidacy. These are the men and women of Montgomery County Police who said, we trust you to lead us, to help us get back on track, to make the changes we need and to move forward in our community. That's real trust and that's real progress, and that's protecting programs, people, and most importantly, our communities at a community base. So when you want to talk about trust, you talk about your word is your bond. When somebody is laying their life on the line for you and you want to talk about change, that's who you come to. That's who the men and women of Montgomery County Police are trusting. And I'm asking you to trust me to be the leader in the state's attorney's office.
So the question is, how is the attorney going to protect residents, programs and services? That has to be rooted in lived experiences. If there's no question, all of us have law degrees, all of us have prosecuted or are prosecuting. That's not the issue. The issue is, let's look at someone's lived experiences. I grew up in Silver Spring in an apartment complex called Summit Hills Apartments, where I've seen my share of drug trafficking. I've seen gun violence. And most recently, I lived at an apartment called the Enclave, where if you've seen the news, they have a great deal of issues. Marijuana is rampant there. Violence is occurring there. Most recently, there was some murders there, or at least one murder, it's not two. These are experiences that I've had, and these are experiences that I carry with me when I think about criminal justice as a former prosecutor and as a criminal defense attorney. And these are experiences that makes me very unique in this race. It's not about being politically convenient when someone is threatened with possible opposition to suddenly have a mental health court or suddenly has some kind of program to make sure that everyone's at peace. It's about constantly thinking about the future of Montgomery County, constantly pushing our elected officials to move us forward in light of the diversity that is clearly obvious in Montgomery County, where 1 in 3 are foreign born, where 1 in 3 are under 50 and another third are over 62. These are the populations that I constantly think about. I thought about that when I was chair of the Silver Spring Citizens Advisory Board. I thought about that when I was co-chair of the Reimagine Policing Task Force. I think about that as a daughter of a 5-year-old who's entering public schools. Of course, I want programs, residents, and services to remain safe and available. And that's the kind of mindset I'm going to have when I'm your next state's attorney.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So what we've heard from every other candidate is that they're insiders, they have inside connections. Well, I've been appointed twice by the county council to the Charter Review Commission and also the Juvenile Justice, the Commission for Juvenile Justice. I was also on the county executive's transition team. But more than that, I've also been endorsed by CASA in Action, Jews United for Justice, and Working Families. Because it's not just, programs are not just run by the insiders. I'm not running as an insider. I have built a coalition throughout Montgomery County, a multicultural, diverse coalition to support my candidacy. But here's another thing. The main thing that you need is the managerial and the executive experience to support those changes. We can all talk about what we want to do. I'm the only challenger that has budgetary experience. I'm part of a leadership team that manages a $20 million budget. Not only do you deal with the county budget, but you have to go to the state. I deal regularly with GOCAP, the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Youth Services, because we get grant funds from them. That's how you protect it. I've been endorsed by 2 state senators and a delegate. You have to go to Annapolis and get the funding to support and protect the programs. It takes real life managerial and executive experience. And I'm the only challenger that brings that. So everybody else can talk about what they want to do, what they aspire to do. You have to be able to pick up the phone. When I call the governor's office, they say, hey, Gary. When I go to Annapolis, they know me. And when I go to the county council and county executive, they have appointed me, they have trusted me. But not only that, not only just the political insiders, the grassroots folks, the stakeholders have supported me. And they have actually really endorsed my campaign. And so based on that, I believe I have the experience and the lived experience. I've been a beneficiary of the programs in Montgomery County. And based on that, I believe I'm the person that can protect and enhance the programs here in Montgomery County.
The next question that was submitted in advance, and this is the last of the advanced questions, so please do be thinking about some additional questions later on tonight. The question is, how will you protect the privacy of women from a state such as Texas to an abortion? And we'll start with Mr. DeGonia. It is similar to a previous question, but it nuances it differently.
I think mean, the nuance must be very, very subtle. I'll give you that one, Elliot. It's a very subtle difference. But I think, as I stated previously, the issue is if another state, such as Texas, passes some sort of long arm statute that says the state of Maryland must disclose or must cooperate in a prosecution or must turn over information, you need someone in the state's attorney's office who is going to stand fast and not violate the rights that we have made sure that are protected here in Maryland. I can't be more clear. I can't be more unequivocal in my stance on that. That's exactly what we have to do. You need to know that. Women in Maryland need to know that. And quite frankly, women in other states who are going to come here, because they're going to come here to receive services because the law is going to change, need to know that we will protect them when they come to Maryland, because the state's attorney's office is about keeping people safe and it's about protecting them. It's about seeking justice, not about punishing people. So on that issue, I couldn't be more clear.
I agree. It's quite nuanced. Forgive me if I'm a broken record, but again, this is why we need women elected into office to fight these battles. As a little side note, I actually have some ties to Texas, so that's the closest thing for me to be an insider that you're going to hear about all night. But nevertheless, because I have the ties to Texas, I know how grossly, real gross. That's what's coming up. Gross. Exactly. Thank you, peanut gallery. How gross it is to value that Texas is going to do all that they can to try to hurt women's right to choose. And I chose to have a child when I chose to have a child, and no woman should have an alternative way. We cannot move back. We have to move forward. And I'll be brief because, again, it's really about protecting our women's right to choose on all fronts, making sure that we are standing ready to litigate, that we have elected leaders in Maryland and in Texas fighting for us, as well as others across the country. They're going to be impacted by what Texas could possibly do. And that's the kind of prosecutor that I'm going to be. It's not just about prosecuting the office, but being a real criminal justice reformer and a fighter in the community, which I've proven through my track record in the community in this county.
Thank you. Certainly. How will you protect the privacy of a woman from a state such as Texas to an abortion?
Well, the quick answer is we have HIPAA rules, and I would make sure that we stand ready to litigate those and work with our partners at the Attorney General's office and with Eric Mayer and the U.S. Attorney's office. But we have to make sure that we have to make sure that our legislators protect them, right? So now that they're going after Roe versus Wade, now it's going to come through Congress. So we have to keep our eye on that, because if they try to reduce the water down the HIPAA regulations, then they'll have the ability to make a move on our medical records. But right now, you have to maintain HIPAA, and then if it becomes an issue where they file MPIA, Public Information Act, we have to be ready to stand strong and fight those as well, to make sure that they don't have access to any woman's medical records. And I don't just mean that just for abortion. I mean, for any issue, we should stand ready to defend on that issue and work with all of our partners, like I said, with the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Attorney General's office. And we got to make sure that our legislators are looking ahead. They have to, we know now, right? They want records, they have to be ready to stand strong to make sure that HIPAA maintains its place to protect all of our records. Thank you.
I think I'm going to agree with some of the prior people up here. I hadn't thought about it. I'm going to get the HIPAA records. We have HIPAA issues all the time. We're going to protect the privacy of your medical records, and I will fight as your state attorney to do that. Number two, we're not going to cooperate with some state outside of Maryland that's going to try to prosecute someone who comes here from out of state, who has exercised her right to choose and has legally obtained an abortion in Maryland. We're not going to do that. And three, if anybody tries to halt access to these facilities, I feel like I'm repeating myself. I'm now agreeing with myself on what I said. But like Tom said something I agree with, Perry said something I agree with, and now I'm agreeing with myself. We're gonna provide you access and protect your access to facilities where these procedures are being provided. Thank you.
All right, we're now at the point where we're asking folks in the live audience if they have questions, and I see a question right here. Questions?
Okay, and if we could limit questions to people from Leisure World, that would be a big help, okay?
Remember, questions are limited to 2 minutes each.
Questions directed to Perry Taylor, but naturally for all the candidates as well. Thank you for reminding us and bringing up Buffalo last week. It was just so fresh. Without in any way wanting to protect the behavior of the shooter, which he should be fully prosecuted, the system failed him as much as he failed Buffalo. He was in front of law enforcement. He was in front of the Board of Ed at his school, acting out and clearly making himself visible and public with his feelings about the matter. And my question for all of you is, what can you do to oversee something like that? And it may sound like a legislative question, and it might be, but the same thing with like the legalization of marijuana recreationally. The state's attorney's office is in a position to influence our legislators. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll start with Ms. Miracle North.
So one of the programs that I've proposed is having a juvenile mental health court. And what that would entail is when a case gets sent to the state's attorney's office for prosecution and there's a termination of charges, if someone is found involved in the occurrence, there's an option to go into a mental health program similar to the current adult mental health program, where it'd be 18 months of vigorously making sure that not just the youth, but the parents have the resources they need to making sure they're not going to reoffend again. I'm sure with the individual in Buffalo, that did not exist. And that's part of the problem that we're dealing with. Mental health is beyond the word. It is a true crisis going on. I, believe it or not, I just turned 40 recently. But people think I'm 23, so I have to say that now. But I've seen the last 20 years of our generation suffering from gun violence in the schools. It's why we have the complex issue of SROs, right? I was in school when there were no SROs, and we all did just fine, graduated in 1999. But I'm more committed than ever to making sure that we have resources in place for our young people so we don't have instances like Buffalo. We also need to commit to training our prosecutors how to identify white supremacy or any elements of that when we're making decisions on who gets certain charges, who gets access to certain diversion programs, what are the plea offers, and what are the sentencings. Because all can be affected by a white supremacist mindset. And that's something that I'm going to train our prosecutors to identify, in addition to the traditional way of learning about the law and making sure that we're prosecuting the cases correctly. That's the change I want to see. That's the vision I'm pushing for. And it's not in existence, but I'm going to fight like heck to make sure that we have that done in Montgomery County. Thank you.
And that was a long, complex question, but I'm gonna try to touch on some points. First, and I know you all remember, a few years ago, there was a student from Bowie State University, Lieutenant Richard Collins, who had just completed his education at Bowie State, visiting the University of Maryland. He was murdered by Urbanski. My office prosecuted that case, and we were able to, we lost the hate crime count. We lost the hate crime count, but we did get the conviction for murder. So what did we do? You know, we were down for a minute, but then we went to Annapolis and we changed them. We changed them all. Our office changed the hate crime law in Maryland to make it such that it doesn't have to directly be, you don't have to say a specific word or commit the crime directly because of race, but based on the circumstance. And what we had in the Urbanski case, there was a lot of stuff on the internet, stuff on his website that showed that he was motivated by race. So you just didn't need, we made it such, you just don't need those specific words, but you can consider all of the circumstances as it relates to a hate crime. So we were very proud to make that change in Annapolis. Regarding gun violence, look, I got Mom's Demand Action Gun Sense Candidate designation. I was very proud of that. I worked closely with that group for 2 years. You're gonna hear other people say, oh, I supported that legislation. For 2 years, we worked on that to ban ghost guns, and I was very proud of that. And I do want to piggyback on something Ms. America North talked about. We are in a behavioral health crisis. And so what do? We have to use our resources, and we want to have interventions prior to the state attorney's office getting involved, prior to becoming a police action. We have to provide our principals at all levels of school with the counselors and the mental health specialists, because they see things long before the police and state attorney's office. They see the tendencies, they know the homes and the circumstances that these kids live with daily. I mean, they can smell a kid who hasn't bathed. They can tell a child that hasn't eaten, and they see the manifestations of mental illness. So I would suggest, I would use my office as a bully pulpit to give the resources to the schools to identify these people long before an offense occurs.
Thank you. A couple things about numbers. Even when I first learned this number back a few years ago, 50% of all police contacts today in the United States, when a police officer walks up to someone and has a contact, the person on the other side of the equation, 1 out of 2 times, has a mental health issue in play. If you go to any American jail in the United States of America, our jails are our largest mental health hospitals from coast to coast. It's not much different here in Montgomery County. I'd probably say it's about 28%. Every year, about 2,000 people upon reception at your local jail have a mental health issue that is diagnosed upon reception. We've got 42 beds. You do the math. How do you get 2,000 people into 42 beds? Where's the real rub? And this is something that's not been discussed. We are having the right conversation, but what people are failing to recognize is how tough it is to get people to take these jobs right now. We are desperately need these jobs because of COVID and things that are going on in our schools. School system got 28 new positions to hire psychologists and inside of our schools. What happened? They've hired about 6 so far. No one wants the jobs. The money that's being offered is not enough. And quite candidly, because of the crisis in America, these people can demand salaries and they shop for the best jobs. The schools can't get the people they need. They desperately need them. I desperately support that. And also in terms of the police, crisis intervention workers for the police department, we don't have enough crisis intervention workers associated with the police to respond to matters when the police have contact with someone who really has a mental health issue in play. We need more teams. What's the problem there? We can't get people to take the jobs. You got to go down one more layer. You can have the rhetoric about what we need, but the problem is getting the people to take the jobs at the salaries we're offering. Thank you.
We have a deadly combination with mental health crisis and guns. Prince George's County has guns that are overflowing on the streets. Montgomery County has seen more guns on the streets than we have ever seen in anybody's lifetime here in Montgomery County. So let's talk about what the state's attorney can do and what I will do as the state's attorney to help prevent exactly what you asked about, which is a Buffalo shooting. I've been talking about gun safety from the beginning. For the last 18 months, I've been talking about a firearms safety task force. Not a gun unit, not just arresting people and locking people up, but a firearms safety task force. What does that involve? That involves state, local, and federal authorities. And what do they tell you? They tell you it involves intelligence, which is what we're talking about, identifying people who may have guns, who don't need those. That means working with our sheriff's office, who serves emergency risk protective orders or red flag laws, that if someone who has a gun or may come into contact with a gun. That means having community-based prosecutors who are working with local law enforcement, who are working with our schools, in our schools, who are working with the communities to help identify people who may have those extremist views and who also have access to guns, so that we're actually solving the problem at the community level. Montgomery County has over 1 million people. The problems that we address in Burtonsville may not be the same problems that we address in Leisure World or in Bethesda or in Damascus. We need people who are in the community serving and working on those problems. A firearm safety task force addresses firearms, also helps identify people who may have those supremacist tendencies and those leanings, but also helps identify the mental health issues. So it's not about getting enough people. We can say, I need more money, I need more money. I'm telling you, we've got the people who are going to be in the community solving those problems, working with the police, working with the community members to help identify. And it's about those partnerships. So it's intelligence, enforcement, and it's also those partnerships that make it work.
My question is regarding drunk driving. There was a case 5.5 years ago of a drunk driver who killed a police officer who was actually on drunk driving duty, no Liata, and his killer got a 10-year sentence. He's out in 5 years. And he's probably going to be a repeat offender, regardless of the fact he's not supposed to drive at all or drink, but he's going to. So what can be done to keep these people in jail? Because I think Noah's life was worth more than a 5-year slap on the wrist.
And we'll start with Mr. Kramer.
Well, what I would tell you is that to keep people in jail, you have to have a prosecutor that's going to aggressively prosecute drunk driving cases. And I'm here to make that commitment today, that I will aggressively prosecute drunk driving cases, not just when there's a fatality, but we have to prosecute and be tough on the offenses of drunk driving. But we also have to have education as a component, right? So you have to have the treatment, you have to be able to be educated on the ills of drunk driving. And at one point, back when I was in high school, remember Maryland, we led the country drunk driving fatalities. And they pushed that on us, you know, it's prime season now, but back in 85 and 86, they used to have the car at our high school, the crash car, right? And they told us, hey, drinking and driving is serious. And that message came in, and MAD came to our schools, and it was a big deal. And together, the law enforcement and the community, we pushed that number down. We push that number down. So it can't be, hey, there's a fatality, let's push jail. But we have to push not only incarceration, but treatment and education. Kids, you know, because I asked my daughter, she's going to prom tomorrow. And I'm like, hey, did the people come to the school with the big car, you know, the crash car? And they were like, no, they didn't do that. They didn't do that. So it's not pushed as hard as it was when we were in school. So that's something I would do. I would, like Mr. McCarthy, I would go to every high school, particularly around prom season. But we have to let it be known all throughout Montgomery County that we will no longer tolerate drunk driving. And I talked about this before. You also have to go to the planning board. Now we have Uber, we have Lyft. So when people are applying for a liquor license for their bars and restaurants, the FAR, you know about development, how many parking spaces do you need? Let's push to reduce the parking spaces. You don't have to drive to the bar anymore. You can get a ride to the bar, you can get a ride home. So we gotta go to the planning board and say, when they put in their application for a restaurant that says stop or a bar, let's cut the spaces down from 75 to 35. And let's really push the taxis and the Uber and the Lyfts to make sure people aren't drinking and driving home. Thank you.
Mr. McCarthy. You know what, why I like this question? I really think that being state attorney, you recognize how difficult the decisions you make every day are. And over the last several years, we've never talked about victims. We've never talked so much about victims. The word victim is seldom heard in conversation about criminal justice anymore. I know the Liata family. I know his mom, I know his dad. I worked with them throughout that. We did prosecute that case. We convicted that young man. How much time you spend in jail is established by Maryland law about what percentage you have to serve of a sentence if it's considered a nonviolent sentence. These are legislative fixes or the guidelines are set by the parole commission. They're not controlled by the state's attorney's office. I do have some sympathy for what you're saying. I will tell you, for those of you who know the Noah Eliada story, there is one really good thing that came out of this, and largely because of his mom and dad using his name to change the law. If you're a drunk driver in Maryland and you're convicted of drunk driving, before you can start a car again, you have to put a device in your car, blow into it to prove that you are not under the influence of alcohol before you can drive that car. Now, listen, I don't have the answer you want for your question, but I can tell you that Noah Eliada and his family and those who worked in his name in Annapolis have done things that are saving lives in Maryland, because we now have those breath machines in the cars so that drunk drivers repeat drunk drivers. And I don't know what happened with that particular drunk driver. Noah was out on Rockville Pike when he was doing that stop, and he was it, but just doing his job. And he was someone who took great pride in being someone who was forcing drunk driving laws. That was sort of his passion as a police officer. So thank you for the question. But we need other partners who care about victims' rights to answer your question in the fashion you've asked them. Thank you.
As I said, we live right up the road here in Albany. So I know the Yoda family as well. And I drive this piece of Georgia Avenue on 97, and I see every day his memory commemorated there. And there is no sentence that any prosecutor could ever ask for that's going to bring somebody back. There is no sentence that is going to give a family the solace that they seek and they deserve. And I don't think any number of years, you can't quantify a number of years that equate to a human life. It's absolutely impossible. As a prosecutor, you have to struggle to balance justice, not vengeance, but justice in a case like that. In that case, it was prosecuted. In cases where lives are endangered, or certainly where lives are lost, you have to ask for a sentence that serves justice. And it is a very individual thing. It's not something that you can just say, okay, well, there was a death, it's this amount. This was a really good person who died. This was a really bad person who died. All of those cases were tragic. So I don't think there is a good answer to that question to say, how do we get more? One answer is you train your prosecutors. You empower them to go out and talk to victims, to talk to the families. So they're not showing up in court on the last day saying, well, here's what we're doing with your case. You engage and you listen, and then you advocate for that. I've done that. I've done that in horrible cases, horrendous cases, through the Family Justice Center, in dealing with victims and helping them seek justice in their cases. So I don't think there is a right answer to that. But it is engaging with your victim, engaging with your community, and seeking a just sentence in every case that comes across your desk.
Thank you.
Sentences like that imposed in the Officer Williams' death is why I'm proposing having one or two assigned prosecutors to traffic fatalities, so they become more familiar with the emotional aspect of prosecuting these cases. If you have a line prosecutor who might do the case here and there, that's one thing, but to constantly see the trauma that families are going through, that the communities are going through, is very critical. And I'm not just talking about drunk driving, I'm talking about pedestrian fatalities, which have been on the rise in this county. Having an assigned prosecutor, one or two, that focus solely on those prosecutions, that understand the nuances of effectively prosecuting those cases, will make those cases stronger prosecuted, will get the convictions that are necessary to achieve justice, will get the sentences necessary to achieve justice, because you have someone who has been seeing it over and over again and knows how certain sentences may look to the families and to the communities, and recommend sentences that are appropriate to ensuring that the communities feel safe.
We are now, it is now just past 8:15, so we'll move on to the concluding statements by each of the candidates. Each candidate has up to 2 minutes to give their concluding statement, and we'll start with Mr. McCarthy.
I want to thank you for allowing me to be here with you tonight. During the time I've been state's attorney, maybe I'll just talk a little bit about the senior community in this county. I've provided over 300 personal seminars on senior safety and senior education during the years I've been state's attorney, 300 times. Many of you sitting here have been at the seminars I've run, whether they're at Oasis or OSHA, or here, or at the Brandeis Group, or at Fireside Chat, or at the World War II. Look, I'm not a new face. I'm here all the time and I'm talking to you all the time. And what's really tough about these debates is they say, tell us how to solve world peace. And you have got a minute to tell us how you're gonna do it, all right? I can't tell you how to solve world peace in a minute. But that's why I've loved the opportunity to engage with this community, particularly here at Leisure World, and talk in depth about the issues that you care about: mental health, diversion, safety, equity, inclusion. I know you want all of those things, but nobody, in all fairness to everybody here, nobody can do it in a minute or 90 seconds and do justice to it. So I would invite you and hope that, or implore you to look at the website for johnmccarthy.us. Look, take some of the materials that are here, talk to others that are here in the room that have met with me and talked to me during my 300 presentations that I've done here. I've met a couple of you along the way, all right? And it's an honor. I mean, I remember one of the great honors I had was when you had your 50th anniversary celebration here in Leisure World. I was the MC with Senator Mikulski and Senator Van Hollen and Jamie Raskin. I was the MC for the event out back in that beautiful, glorious day when we celebrated the 50 years of the establishment of this community. Thank you very much for having me with you today.
I want to thank everyone. Leisure World is always a hotbed of discussion and questions. So I want to thank you all for having us here this evening. It is critically important, as you know, to vote. It's critically important to vote for the right people, to put them in positions of leadership. And the state's attorney's office is one of those down ticket races that matters every day. It's not a job where you can just show up. You can't just keep doing things the same way you've been doing them for 20 years. You can't keep running the same programs that have been cranking people through for the last 25 years, doing it the same way. It's great. I've been here. I've seen the stand-up routine. I've seen the show that gets put on, but it's not a show. This is a job where you make decisions that impact lives every day. And you have to inspire and you have to give the right direction to your people who are in the courtrooms, who are asking for those sentences in the Mr. Leota case, who are advocating for the victim who has been abused by her husband for the third time, or for the senior, who is our largest growing population here in Montgomery County, who has been victimized by a scammer or by someone who has passed off a license to them for a home improvement and taken advantage of somebody. And you need a lawyer who's going to stand up for you in court, who is going to advocate for you and your community, who is in this courthouse every day, who is in district court, who is in juvenile court this morning advocating for a child in the juvenile system. Someone who has that experience. It's not about budgets. It's about leadership. It's about having the right heart and the right direction to move this office into the future, focusing on the right priorities and coming at it with a heart that seeks justice. If you want to look at how the office is right now, read Justice Sotomayor's dissent in the Kaur case, where she critically is concerned about the ethics of the state's attorney's office as it stands now. And she says, this is an office that stands in justice. And that is what prosecutors should be seeking. And that's what you're going to get with me as your next state's attorney.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to Leisure World community and the supporters out there that heard us tonight. As you can see, I wear glasses and some of the audience too. And after a period of time, our eyes change focus. We might like our lenses because we're familiar with them, we're used to them. but we must change our lenses. And this race is about changing the way we're seeing justice in Montgomery County. And I argue that I have the best vision, the fresh vision needed to move Montgomery County forward. Not only that, I have the professional and lived experiences necessary to understand the complex diversity of this county. I also have the proven leadership to show that I'm the true criminal justice reformer in Montgomery County. I mentioned a little bit earlier tonight that I served on the Silver Spring Citizens Advisory Board. And it was at that time when we talked about youth crime and youth curfews. And I remember the state's attorney's office begging them to be part of that conversation. And they eventually did. But it was not their leadership that pushed the ball forward. It was mine. I sought stakeholders throughout the county, throughout the region, youth leaders, principals, civic groups, to make sure we're not criminalizing our youth. And that was over 10 years ago while I was a prosecutor. You see, I understand the job of keeping everybody safe, but we're not going to use that job to over-criminalize our community, because that is what hurts our community, especially our youth, that you and I all need to take care of us when we get older. As I mentioned before, I have a 5-year-old, I have a family. So safety is critically important to me. But being a child of immigrants, being a daughter of Silver Spring, I want to make sure all of us, not just people in this room, but people outside there that don't look like any of us in this room, feel safe. That is the mindset that I want to bring to this office. That is the lens of justice that is needed to move Montgomery County forward to a better future in public safety. Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank Leisure World this evening. Thank you all for attending and staying throughout the whole thing. I want to thank everyone online and watch virtually. Well, this is it. I'm giving my closing statement. Why should I replace John McCarthy? When I started my campaign, I said justice is evolving in America, and it's not evolving at the appropriate pace here in Montgomery County. Where Mr. McCarthy and I differ is the diversion program. There are diversion programs, but in our diversion programs, we pay for community college. We pay for job placement. And we do that through taking asset forfeiture money, taken from convicted drug dealers. We take that money and we reinvest it in the community and we build a better citizen. That's just one example. And we have several programs. I disagree with Mr. McCarthy. Where I work now, we are the most progressive state attorney's office in the state. But let me tell you what it takes. It takes the lived experience, the executive experience, and the managerial experience. It's easy to sit on the side and talk about what you want to do. I heard one comment about it's not about managing people. If you've ever managed people, I mean, really, if you ever really managed people, it's a big deal. You just don't walk on the street and say, hey, I can manage people. We're talking about managing 170 people in the most critical time of law enforcement and criminal justice in this county. You have to have the real lived experience. You have to have the managerial experience. You have to have the executive experience. You've heard the evidence. The evidence suggests that I am the man to replace John McCarthy. Justice demands that I am the person to be elected as your next state's attorney. Thank you.
In a moment, Roger will have the last word, but before we get to that.
That's Lawrence O'Donnell. No.
Okay. I see there are a number of candidates in the audience who are running for other offices. And so I'd like to invite each one of them to stand up, give us your name, and give us the office that you're running for. Judge, would you start, please?
Thank you so much. My name is Judge Teresa Chernoski. I am a judge of Montgomery County Circuit Court. Myself with 3 other judges will be on the primary ballot, Judge Kathleen Dumais, Judge Carlos Acosta, and Judge Rachel McGuckian. We are all seated judges, and there are 2 contenders running against us. We would ask for your support. We have cards, gavel, pencils with our names on it, and we hope that you will vote for us on the primaries. Thank you.
Gary?
Hi, my name is Kieran Mari. I'm running for Montgomery County Council, District 5, hopefully to represent Leisure World.
Good evening, these are Democrats, Dana Caroma, part of the Democratic family. I'm currently on the Central Committee, worked with many of you during the last election to get Donald Trump out of the White House, but also defeated Robert Ficker in the ballot initiative. So again, I was endorsed by former county executive Leggett, who said I'm the best candidate in this race for Council District 5. And I'm also having an event on Saturday at White Oak. So I invite all of you, where State Senator Will Smith will be there, together with former MCPS board member Christopher Buckley will also be there as well. So thank you, and I look forward to being here again.
Thank you. My name is Fatma Saberi. I am running for Montgomery County Council, this District 5. I live in White Oak, and I've lived there for the past 20 years. I'm an attorney. I practice immigration and special education law. I am an area coordinator with Montgomery County Democratic Party, former chair of the African Diversity Leadership Council for the Maryland Democratic Party. And I am here representing myself and hoping you will support me. And I was here last weekend. Thank you so much, all of you, for what you did last weekend. And thank you for the rally from last summer for Black Lives Matter. You guys are just the best. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Bass. I'm running for sheriff of Montgomery County. I have a meet and greet coming up on the 31st here at Leisure World in Potomac Room this afternoon. I would ask for you to support me in being the first person of color to be in the sheriff's office this coming election, July 19th. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Karen Bushel, and I am the current clerk of the court in Montgomery County Circuit Court, and I'm running for election, and I hope to have your vote on July 19th. Thank you so much.
I'm your delegate. I'm Charlotte Crutchfield, and I'm running for and that's Senator Ben Kramer, that's Delegate Bonnie Cullison, and also Delegate Vaughn Stewart. Thank you, everybody.
As Roger mentioned earlier, June 2nd, the Leisure World Democratic Club is going to be sponsoring a candidates forum with the Democratic candidates for governor. Top of the ballot. If you're here tonight, please be there on June 2nd. There are several other forums coming up in the community, in this general vicinity. The next three are all being held on Zoom, so easily available to everybody. On May 25th, there will be a school board candidates forum for the at-large and District 5 seats. June 1 will be school board District 1 and 3. And remember, unlike all the other positions, the county council, the Congress, the legislature, where you only get to vote for the candidates running from the district that you live in, for Montgomery County School Board, every registered voter in Montgomery County is entitled to vote for all 4 seats that will be on the ballot. The at-large seat, the District 1 seat, the District 3 seat, and the District 5. Finally, if you want another look at the 4 candidates here this evening, on June 15th, there will be a state's attorney forum. These last 3 forums, the 2 school board forums and the state's attorney forum, are being sponsored by, as part of the ongoing Aspen Hill Public Affairs Forum series that started in 1984. For more information on that, if you send a quick email to aspenhillforums@gmail.com, they'll send you the Zoom information. Thank you all for coming. Go wait for Roger's final statement. Thank you to the candidates. Thank you to the club. And Roger has the last one.
Well, thank you, moderator, and thank you, panel. being the camera, the video. And in the back, Barbara Levin, who mans table back here. Pat and Diane, thank you for the refreshment. I mean, this panel was the best panel we've had. You haven't made it any easier, at least for me, to make up my mind. You're all excellent candidates and we really appreciate it. We couldn't get to every question, but I'm sure the panelists will be willing to stay around and shake hands and answer any questions you may have. Again, see you again on June 2nd, 7 o'clock.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and join us again on June 2nd for the gubernatorial candidates forum. Have a good night.